are I'm sure in touch with the world of coaching and mentoring, and then we are adding supervision to it. So there is a conversation there also. So what would be interesting today would be to know, first of all, what's the difference between these three animals: coaching, mentor coaching, and supervision. What's the key difference? And then we would love to know the examples. What are the organizations? So I'm sure coaching is anyway becoming more prominent. Organizations are using coaching, leveraging it. It's not it's not a new baby anymore in the market, but surely mentor coaching is done as a part of mandate, but not as a part of culture. And supervision is something we have hardly touched. So it'll be worthwhile to understand, why should we even look at these processes? What's the advantage for organizations, for coaches, for HR L&D to really invest in these processes for the benefit of organization and for the benefit of leaders? So let's start from the first question. What is the key difference between coaching, mentoring, and supervision? So I can go one by one to all of you, and you can share what's your understanding about the key difference. So James, what would you say is supervision, which is not coaching?
Coaching versus supervision. I would say mentoring is more developmental. So I'd like to start there. It's helping people advance their skills. Coaching, I think most people on here are coaches. So the ICF definition is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking creative process to inspire them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So it's unleashing their potential. In coach supervision, we talk about it classically in three ways that it helps coach. And I want to talk later about the three ways that I see it helping organizations, but the three ways I see coach supervision is different from mentoring and coaching. It includes elements of both, but the three key areas are, so it includes the developmental, but it also includes resourcing, like how we take care of ourselves. We as coaches are the instrument by which we do our craft, and coaching supervision helps us look at where we show up. And then the third part is, boy, I'm blanking. Aida can help me. It was resource, ethics, norms, and helps us navigate. And this is particularly important in the work that I do, and I'll talk a little more about that later. That's how I would define it.
Okay, so Aida, why should an organization care about investing on mentor coaching and supervision when they're already investing in coaching? That itself is like a stretch for organizations. So why should they even bother to invest
in mentoring?
In mentor coaching, let's say.
In mentor coaching, well, I think that we have to go to, the other day we were talking about creating a culture of coaching. And when you invest in mentor coaching, it's because you are also developing internal coaches, and you want those coaches to be better, because actually the movement and the development of the organization will be together with external coaches, with internal coaches, with supervision, and with that mentoring. There's also something different that could be mentoring within the organization that will go with people between that works in the organization, where with people with more experience, mentoring people with less experience, and transferring their knowledge and their cases. So I think that it's very important to keep improving and developing skills, as just James mentioned, and competencies to be better coaches and to instill better results in their clients.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you and James is that supervision has a different role to play, and mentor coaching is more about adding and sharpening the skills. So Rajat, my question to you is, why should an organization bother to spend on supervision? What's really the need? What happens if we don't spend?
I think, as James said, right, the basic requirement, the concept of supervision is it's developmental, it's creating a resource, as well as it's supporting, right, at the end of the day, the coach, right? So, and this is happening while the coach is working as a coach itself, while our mentor coaching concept is more about developing the skill offline as well, when they are getting ready to become a coach or other times. But supervision is something that is happening while you're coaching people, while you're working as a coach itself. and it helps you improve the quality of coaching, and it helps you ensure that the impact is much larger finally on the coaching itself. And it provides a space, a neutral, safe space for the coach to also figure themselves out finally. And it could, at times when a coach or coachee is stuck, it might not be just because the skill set of the coach is at question. It might be various other reasons why the situation is stuck completely. And supervision can help unravel those pieces. Whereas a mentor coach might only think about the skill set of the coach, supervision goes more systemic in nature.
Okay, so then in NetNet, I'm hearing that it's basically both of the processes apart from coaching are for the development of coach, right? My fundamental question still remains the same as to why should an organization really bother to invest in these processes? Yes,
I can
please.
share.
Yes, James, please.
Okay.
And what
And
are
I
you
can
seeing?
share.
What are you seeing in your clients? What is the position when they ask for these processes when they go beyond coaching? That'll be nice to know, actually.
Yes, so I can speak a little bit. As Jaya said, I'm the Vice President of Coach Supervision for ASUP, which is a company that, it's a tech company that is innovating in terms of providing coaching at scale affordably throughout organizations, using technology to do that. And so as we scale coaching has traditionally been a lot in the C-suite. As we begin to provide it to lower level executives, managers, and even individual contributors at a more cost-effective level, organizations are looking to figure out how to do this in a way that maintains the integrity of the coaching, where they can get consistency and quality of coaching across the organization without them having to do huge oversight. And so at ASUP, we have all of our coaches are supervised, and all that does, and our clients love it, and they have chosen us over other organizations precisely because that they know that we've got an overlay of oversight to provide that consistency and quality of experience. So those are the two key reasons that I see organizations paying actually extra to have coaches that are supervised in systems. The third area where I see a lot of pioneering happening, in particular, Michel Morel out of France and others in Europe are pioneering a next level of supervision, which actually isn't just about the individual consistency and quality of each coaching experiencing, but how does supervision, the larger vision, supervision, leverage all of that coaching on a systemic level so that the entire organization becomes coached. And so, part of, I'm coaching now or supervising coaches working for specific organizations. And so we get those coaches in a supervision session where we're confidentially speaking about some of the issues that are coming up. So there's a couple of them. One of them is a large hospital. I'm based in Boston. So we have a large, hospital that we have a number of coaches working in. And we begin to see when we get those coaches trying to figure out how they're showing up in the system, we begin to see some parallel processes with the coaches as we discuss our clients that are happening also in the organization. And we can begin to see those systems better together, and we can leverage that larger vision for the benefit of the organization. So I've said a lot there, but so I'll contribute there and I'll pause for a moment to see how that resonates.
Interesting. So I'm hearing that it is like a systemic approach when you're looking at a bigger picture, long-term picture, and a more holistic picture. That's when you're basically trying to integrate these these processes to bring a better vision to the organization, to be able to notice patterns, and then to be able to design strategies and decision making based on that. Interesting. So then my curious question to all of you is, why then we hesitate to invest? Because is it about startup, non-startup, mature organization, big pockets, or is it about understanding awareness? Is it about people culture. What is it about? What is it about that makes the decision makers or the business organizations to understand that this is critical for their culture? So maybe I can ask Ida.
Supervision, you mean? Yaya?
All of these three, Ida.
The three of them, because I think that, first of all, well, with supervision is still getting in, and if you can see, actually the supervision is broadly used more in Europe than in Asian countries, and then in Americas it's getting little by little. So I think that the organizations still are not seeing very well the results and the impact of supervision. So this is something different. In terms of coaching, well, everything is, although we have been in the market for so many years, I think that the many organizations still don't see the results, the clear results and the impact of how working in, as we say, in relations, in the conversations of the organizations show in the results. Not all the coaches in the world are showing the impact on the results of the organizations. And actually organizations want to improve their results. So I think that this is key, and this is our responsibility as coaches to keep developing ourselves and to keep showing to the world the results that we accompany the organizations to get.
So basically I'm hearing it is number one, awareness, and the second is the results that we show through these processes, right? This is what I heard. Okay, so let's move forward.
Take care of course.
Sorry, there was a lag, it seems. That's fine.
Sure.
Thank you. Great. So Rajat, what are you seeing in India in terms of supervision? What's the openness? What's the conversation which is happening with business leaders when we are talking about supervision?
So in India, what I've been noticing in the last 1.5 years is we are we were some of the few who started in India as supervisors. Before that, people didn't even know what supervision, and there is a concept of supervision, in coaching at all, right? So, in the last 1.5 years, we have been talking supervision, right? So I've been doing supervision, you have been doing supervision, and there are a couple of others like us who are practicing supervision in India, right? So the market is completely unaware about supervision as of now. The leader, forget business leaders, I'm talking about HR as well, right? So they have no clue what supervision is in coaching. Most of them, I think 95% wouldn't have heard about supervision at all. And so the market is completely, as of now, ready to start on that front. And as Ida said, there's not enough data to prove that supervision works in coaching. So when, as somebody who's a supervisor goes to a client and says, hey, supervision, they say, okay, why? And we're like, okay, it works. But then where's the data it works? People are doing research. There's a lot of things going on. I've done enough for I've done enough supervision. There are others who have been doing it. There's, the coaches love it when they go through supervision. Yeah, but there's no research proving that there is impact on coaching through supervision. And I think that's where we don't have enough to prove to the Indian market yet. While we can keep on doing, and I've been doing pro bono coach supervision, and as James said, his organization does, we also do as an organization to all our coaches. We provide supervision, but we are not able to mark up like James is able to for supervision. So, it's mostly saying, this is a value add today to, create an industry out there so people can appreciate, okay, makes sense. Supervision is there. I think there's some way to go. We are still young in coaching in India.
Yeah.
As a market, supervision is a next level for it.
Interesting. So tell me, James, because you've been dealing with so many supervisors, is it necessary for someone to be a coach to become a supervisor? And just an instant question which has come up for me.
I mean, the short answer I would say is yes.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I would contextualize that a little bit. I think one of the critical components around coaching and supervision that I'm finding are and this goes back to what Rajat and Aida were saying, is you need to demonstrate results. And so, you know, we work with, I work with hundreds of coaches, and the coaches that really do well, there can be a number of coaches that are certified in any number of things, but if they're not getting results, it doesn't matter. And the same thing with supervision. We need supervisors who, I mean, I'm finding that the early adopters in the Americas, as Aida said, we're very new to supervision here, and we still, HR people still have no idea what coach supervision is here. But they're sold on the idea, particularly in the US, because they're overwhelmed with everything. And when we talk about supervision, they see this as, oh, I don't have to worry about this. HR leaders are often having to vet individual coaches. They're having to double check, you know, that the coaching is providing, you know, what everyone says that they're providing. And when we say we have supervision to deal with any conflicts of interest or concerns, they're like, oh, thank goodness that's off my plate. They don't even need data yet. They do, they will, but that's a big sell. So what I would say is, yeah, I do think that a supervisor really needs to have coaching experience. The EMCC is the largest certifier of coach supervisors, and I would say that's a really good starting point. And you need supervisors that understand coaching. Otherwise, you know, what are you supervising? What are you seeing?
Interesting. Interesting. Maybe I'm just thinking of a counter view on this to say, hey, if supervision is about supervision, can I broaden the supervision of people who are in people development industry, necessarily not the coaches, let's say trainers, let's say OD professionals? Can they get benefited from a process like supervision? And this is just an idea to explore and not to contrast anything, but just to, you know, bring up and say, hey, maybe this can be a proposition to explore in your, and I know there is a long way to go for supervision, right? Interesting. Would you have example of some organization which applied all the three processes, supervision, coach, mentor coaching, and saw different results? I mean,
the three processes in Argentina, I don't have.
Okay.
Not with supervision.
So the two processes are applied, coaching and mentor coaching, or only one?
Yes. No. Coaching and mentor coaching. No, coaching mainly.
Only coaching. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So organization is paying for coaching, but necessarily not for mentor coaching.
Mainly, yeah.
All right. James, Rajat, do you have examples where any company would have applied all three or any two of them?
James, go ahead.
So there was actually something in the chat box talking about mentoring. And I just want to get clear on mentoring. Mentoring is often, and when I talk about what coaching is, you know, distinguishing it between mentoring. Mentoring often means a mentor shares their experience. And in the coaching world, particularly ICF has a specific concept of what mentoring is, which is mentor coaching. You need certain mentor coaching hours to get certain certifications, and Rajat can probably speak to that more. But there's a very specific concept around mentoring. So what I would say is that ASUP, we don't, we employ coaching and supervision. And like I say, supervision does have some mentoring parts to it, but it's not considered mentoring per se by the ICF, even though supervision does provide some CEUs, some continuing education credits. So I would say that purely we don't employ mentoring, but we do employ coaching and supervision. And with the companies that I've worked with, there are probably about 4 or 5 companies in particular, because we're pioneering how we do this specifically with coaches per company. We've been doing supervision kind of, you know, one-on-one, and, you know, it doesn't matter what company you are. And that's been extremely helpful. But there are probably about 5 or 6 companies where we do employ that specific supervision and coaching. And we do see, another example I'll give is, we were working with a large hotel hospitality chain. And when we brought the coaches together into supervision, one of the things we began to see in particular was, as a coach, you begin to identify a lot with your client. You begin to feel for your client, like you become their cheerleader. You know, acknowledging and celebrating is something that we do as coaches. So then when the coaches get together and they start, you know, processing what's going on with their clients, if I'm, say, coaching somebody in an organization who happens to be the boss of, say, who Aida is coaching in the organization, Aida may be coming with frustrations about her client that, you know, about her boss, right? About her client's boss. And then I'm coming in with the frustrations that I'm hearing from her client's boss about her client.
Mm.
And so I'm trying to process how I help my client deal with these. And then Aida, and I've been in these processes where I'm listening to what Aida is frustrated with in terms of helping her client. And I'm like, oh my goodness, she has no idea what's going on. And I'm like, whoa. And so I begin to reformulate a little bit about what's happening. And I'm like, Aida, I begin to think Aida's wrong. So we begin a parallel process between Aida and I. And then we separate it from the organization. And I just look at how, you know, Aida and I then can have a conversation about how we are filtering this in our conversation. So we don't have to talk about the client. But as Aida and I filter the anxiety that I'm hearing when I hear Aida speak and the frustration Aida hears from me when I'm speaking, we begin to have a deeper sense in our bodies about what's going on for us. And it transforms then how we coach or how I coach one-on-one. There's no data on this yet, but actually Michel Morel has a case study in one of his research papers about a group of coaches that he worked with in supervision, whereby all the coaches began to experience a similar physical illness. And when they were able to process how they were feeling in their body, they were able to release tensions. And actually, they saw how there was actually some illness in the organization. Now, this is all kind of speculated, but there was some correlation, maybe. They began to see their health got better in the coaches, and actually their coaches' health got better. And there was, so it's an interesting thing that we're seeing. There's not a lot of hard data on it, but I'm experiencing it, and I think our clients are beginning to see that as well.
So, okay, so just to summarize that, I'm understanding that it's basically supporting the practitioners to look at their blind spots and to be able to work with that, because there's so much that they do with their clients in terms of psychological processes and emotional processes. And then this is a place where they can actually come and filter out a lot of blind spots, actually look at them and then decide and make a choice to work out of it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, may I add something that came to my mind while James was talking, that actually another spot for us to really value supervision in the organization is to take care of the organization itself, the clients and the organization, and their privacy and the confidentiality. Because sometimes if a group of coaches come and start talking about what is going on with their clients, we are really kind of forgetting that confidentiality and this ethics that we have to have as coaches. So if you can go and work it with your supervisor, you will be taking care of yourself as a coach, and you will be taking care of the client and the whole organization. So I think that this could be very important.
Yeah, so again, I'm hearing it's basically a well-being area, and it's in more favor of practitioners who are going through these kind of processes to be able to take care of them so that they can do a very clean job, because otherwise psychologically there's so many complexity which keep arising, which we are actually not even aware of at times. Understood. Great. What?
And I think, actually, I think Rajat had a good clarification in the chat. And I was wondering if you could just voice that, because I think it's important, how we do supervision.
Yes. So I'm going to read some of the chats which are here. Which one are you referring to, James? Molly's?
That the coachee is not part of the supervision session. I think that's an important
Okay.
clarification.
Okay. So there is a question, is the coachee part of the coach supervision process? And is the coach supervision contextual to coach and coachee scenario? Is it coaching skills centered? And I think Rajat, you've said something. Would you like to share with everybody?
I think so. Typically in supervision, the coachee is not part of the session, so that the coach has a safe space and a neutral space to talk to their supervisor, right? So they can, talk about what's happening to them, what's going on in the relationship with the client, the relationship with the organization itself, right? Without fear of the coachee listening to all that and having a view and, bias towards that as well. So the space is created for the coach as a safe and neutral space, right? So hence the coachee is not part of the session itself. And it's obviously very, very contextual to the relationship between that coachee and the coach, right? So the coach might come up with different things with different coachees. They might be in different places with different coachees itself. They might have different situations with them, right? And each of them could become a different topic as part of supervision itself, right? And it might so happen that it might just be the same pattern repeating again in different places with different coaches, and which could emerge in a supervision session saying, hey, this is a behavior pattern the coach is showing, or the thinking pattern that the coach has as well, right? So it's important that, and that's why, it's not said typically, you need supervision every day, right? So, even if you look at EMCC or, anywhere else, they all say, at least quarterly have one session with the supervisor, so that you have a sort of an aggregation of the coaching sessions that you've done, and you can, have some more patterns emerging in a supervision session.
Interesting that you say that, because a couple of supervision sessions that I attended for myself, I noticed there's so many things that I'm projecting to my client that I'm not aware about. And then I'm complaining about my client saying, hey, this is what my client is doing, without realizing there is a role I am playing in that, because we get blinded by our expertise. Very interesting, very interesting. Okay, let me see. Molly has a comment here. I'm going to read that. The keyword of supervision seems crucial. I wonder if the language used in other locations affects its impact, as well as considering its cultural relevancy and based on the need of the area in order to help its appeal and achieve more reach. What would you like to say about that?
I would say, yeah, the term supervision is loaded, and it does inhibit our ability to really help people see how actually formative it is. And I think that's something we struggle with. I struggle with a lot, but I'm not quite sure how to change it because it's kind of ubiquitous right now.
Yeah, and I feel that the issue that we were facing with coaching as a word a few years back is the same issue we are facing with supervision. So where coaching was 10 years back is where supervision today. And the vocabulary is not very helpful. It's really not helpful, because in a lot of organizations, actually managers are called supervisors. And then there is at least in India, the organizations that I have worked with, managers are called supervisors. And then you don't know that how do you explain this supervisor and that supervisor, and how do you make a difference? Interesting. I think we have a long way to go. And as we said, all of us who are talking in this conversations are like pioneers who are really talking ahead of time and really experiencing those supervision or any of the trends which are helpful in future. And we may see organizations adopting, with especially the crisis hitting all of us, these processes will become more and more critical. There's a question in the chat box which says, coach gets the recording of the session, or how does supervision happen basically? How would you answer?
No, we don't get the recording of the session. And actually, this is one difference, because I was talking when I trained as a supervisor, I was talking to psychologists, because actually this is something that comes from the psychology discipline, that they do need supervision. And for them, many times they do work with a recording, and they do work directly. They want to listen to the client to work in the psychology supervision. In our case, at least, we don't use the recording. We go with our perception because it's what is happening to us with the client. So, but I don't know if you have experienced something different.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is in mentor coaching, we basically ask our coach to say, hey, get your recording, I'll listen to that, and then they'll give you feedback about the skills. But in supervision, we basically talk to the coach and understand what's their perception about their client, and then actually access our own emotions and thinking and understand what's happening to me here and now, and try to understand the relationship. And one of the key difference between mentor coaching and supervision is it doesn't work in parts. It's work on the relationship between the coach and the coachee and their systems. It's a more systemic approach where it talks about the relational fields rather than people. It's not about the roles. It's about their relationships and how is the whole system impacting them. So that's how it becomes very different. There's another question here which says, how do
let me add, and who we are as coaches.
And who we are.
This is what we look in supervision.
And who
we are with that client.
With that client. Interesting. And these are things which are actually not visible clearly. I mean, you really need somebody trained to understand these psychological, intelligence, especially the relational fields, which are very hard to see. And okay, interesting. I'm moving on to the next question. It says, how do a supervisor clears, unblock self-inhibitions of a coachee? Okay. Of a coachee or a coach? I think of a coach because they coach. Of the coach. Okay. So how do they clear? I think that's the whole process. Who would like to answer? James, would you like to answer that?
Actually, I haven't.
Are you going to pass on to Rajat?
Yeah, I'll pass on to Rajat.
Rajat, why don't you start, Rajat?
Sorry?
No, Rajat.
Rajat, the question is for you now.
Yeah, so I see supervision to be more closer to coaching than mentor coaching, right? So there is a lot of space created like a typical coach by the supervisor, right? It's a safe, neutral space again that is created. And we explore the coachee, the coach as if they are they are a human being. And, while they are working as a coach, so it's a job they are doing, right? So coaches are also doing their job. Imagine that, right? And you are helping them perform better. They're doing the same to the coach when they are doing a job of a coach and helping them perform better, right? So there is a lot of element of coaching that comes in wherein, you help them see within themselves, as Ida said, who are they at all times, right? Yeah. What are the emotions running inside them? What are some of the behaviors, patterns, what are some of the reactions they are doing at times? What's the tonality of their voice when they're talking about the coachee, right? So everything is explored like a typical coaching experience, but then there is also a sense of going systemic, and you can sort of ask questions which are like more directive towards, hey, what about that? And what about that as well? Can we look at that space as well with you, right? So in coaching, we don't typically do that. But in supervision, we say, let's look at systems. Let's look at the organization. Let's look at the coachee now. Who is this coachee you're working with? Let's talk about the coachee as well. Right? What have you done with them till now? So there's this extra element that comes in supervision beyond, the supervisor being a coach, right? But in mentoring, we are actually going to tell them what to do as well from our experience, which doesn't happen in supervision.
So what I understand is not only the coaching. So because this is also a query which comes very frequently as to, are you saying supervision is coaching of coaches? And that's the differentiation you're making, saying, hey, it is coaching plus. There are some more things which we add to the process because the scope increases. And like coaching is an inside out process, supervision is inside out plus outside in and system. So a lot of the scope and the field expands with supervision. Interesting. I have Sindhu asking.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
No. Just, the difference also is that in coaching, as we were talking at the beginning, we work with them to unleash their potential. In supervision, we are colleagues. So when we talk about clearing spaces, we also make an agreement that we are colleagues, and so we talk in a different level, and we bring ourselves as instruments that will give a lot of information to explore the coach situation, the coach case, whatever is bringing to the supervision session.
Yeah, and if I could, maybe I can share with you one of the most shocking things I found when I began to be supervised, because I had been mentored, I had been coached, and so the thing that was really different in supervision, it included mentoring, it included coaching, but what was new was the supervisor began talking about themselves, which shocked me. Like the supervisor said, "Oh, I'm feeling this when you say that." And I'm like, you're not supposed to be talking about yourself, right? Coaching is other focus, but supervision is about who we are, how we come into the system. So even though as a coach, I'm supposed to be focused on the client, I'm bringing myself in. And so what supervision does is it allows me to begin to understand, oh, what am I bringing into the system? And the supervisor allows that by bringing themselves in the system. So now when I'm with a client, say I'm coaching Aida, I'm not going to say, oh, Aida, I'm feeling this as a, if you're a coachee, but I'm going to be more aware of, oh, these are the things that are keeping me from having a clean, unblocked experience with my client. And I can get more honest about them because the supervisor, as colleagues, we begin to explore who I am as instrument. That's what shocked me.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think I also went with a notion saying, hey, somebody's going to coach me. But then supervision actually opened up a lot of other things which I wasn't ever aware of. And then I love going to supervisions because it kind of adds a different value to me. Interesting. Let me look at more questions that are coming in the chat window. Sindhu is asking us, how do we show coaching ROI in the organization? So very evergreen question. Is it an effective way to link and quantify with KPIs of the individual teams? Is there a better way? How would you like to respond to that?
I mean, I can
Well,
respond.
I think that
start,
James. No, just start.
It's okay, James. You have a lot of experience with everything put together, so we'll put you on screen.
Yeah, no, we deal with this a lot. I mean, there's a number of ways to think about this. One is we know that coaching enhances employee retention, and so companies often know very clearly, large corporations know how much it costs them to hire and onboard a new employee, or the cost of losing an employee, which can be $60,000, $150,000, whatever it is. And when we prove that their retention increases, that decreases the amount of money that they have to spend on that. Other ways to do it that I see a lot, and we do it as well, it's backwards facing. Actually, David Peterson, who's the head of coaching at Google, has done a lot of research saying it's more effective to ask a manager or an employee or an HR rep after 6 months or a year of coaching, how much more productive do you think you were? How much more productive do you think this employee was? And then you can quantify that. And if you ask that question over and over with more and more coachees, yeah, some will be inflated, some will be less, but you'll begin to get a sense of a dollar value. You asked if you connect it with KPIs. We don't so much connect it with KPIs. At least in our organization, it's more about behavioral change. So seeing if there's, and mostly that's measuring perception changes in the system, and it can help when you include people in that goal setting process. But those are some examples, and there's some in the literature. David Peterson has some good stuff about measuring ROI. Peter Hawkins in his new book, Systemic Coaching, has some good stuff, but I'll leave it with that.
Thank you. Thank you. Aida, you wanted to add something?
No, I just like to talk about this formula, this R is equals to R. These relations are equal to results. So we set with the organization the results that they want to achieve, and we work on the relations because this is a net of conversation. And if we work in the different kind of conversations that the company or the employees are going to start having to get those results. So how are we going to get results 10 if our relations are 2? So we are in charge of the relations, and they will see the results
Interesting. That's a new one I've heard. R is equal to R. Lovely.
I
Lovely.
found, yeah, it's lovely. I like that.
Good, good. All right. So let me see. What's my next question? Starting point. Okay, Kamal Deep is asking us. Starting point could be good to include conversation about how did it benefit you? What was the impact on your performance? Okay. I think the question really is this a question we can ask when we are starting a conversation? Kamal, would you like to clarify your question a little bit more on the speaker?
Yeah, thank you. Jaya, the question that was asked was, what is the ROI on coaching? And my thought around that was that before we get into devising more sophisticated models around how to measure ROI, etc., the starting point could be to start having structured conversations between the manager and employee about what impact of coaching was. What did you feel? How do you think it impacted your productivity? Start recording those conversations. Over a period of time, when you have multiple organizations, multiple managers do this gap that we have around data, on what is the impact of coaching in real life organizations is something that's going to start getting filled up. So I think we must start very, very basic in terms of having structured conversations with employees who are going through coaching to ask them 4 or 5 very key questions. How do you think coaching impacted you? How do you feel about it? How do you think you can take this forward? Would you like to do it again? Or would you want your team members to do it again? And I think that is a good starting point to start measuring ROI rather than getting into complications around ROI.
All right.
That's what I was trying to say here. Sorry, I couldn't type it that properly.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you for your inputs. So I have my next question saying, what may be the additional skills, traits that a supervisor coach needs beyond being a seasoned coach? That's a wonderful question, actually. Rajat, what would you like to say about that?
So from a coach to a supervisor, right? One thing that I learned a lot more is managing myself, right, at all times, because there is a whole portion in supervision where we talk about what's happening to me and what's the relationship I'm forming with my supervisee, right? So working with self, now ICF has started talking self-management and everything in the new competencies, but supervision already spoke about it. How as a supervisor, what's going on with you, right, and what's happening there as well. So one is that, the other piece is the contracting bit as a skill set, because I know Ram asked this question earlier saying, what happens when a coachee comes to know, there's a question there, that their topic will be discussed in a supervision session. Is that taking away the safe space from the coachee itself, right? So I think contracting is another big piece in supervision as a skill set itself, because you have to manage that contract between the coachee, coach organization, and the coach and the supervisor, right? And that requires a different level of contracting skilling as well, right? Which most of the people, it's beyond behavioral, but it's also very, very tactical as well and strategic in supervision, right? So there are back-to-back contracts, there are confidentiality contracts, there are all kinds of stuff that are done between the coach and the supervisor. So as a skill, that is very important as well. How do you do that? I think that the third skill set is creating a supportive space throughout the session, right? And create a space where you can talk about norms, when you're talking ethics and the standards and everything, which we don't do in coaching with the client, right? Your ability, because you have been a seasoned coach, so you understand the coaching part, but how do you help others see the normative part in coaching, right? And that's another skill set that is required for in a supervisor. So these are 2-3 things that come up immediately in my head.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of what Peter Hawkins says that when you're supervising, ask the coach which is the client you don't want to talk about. And there is something about the coach that's happening there. So it really sticks with me, because say, hey, just ask the coach, which is the coach you would never, which is the client you'd never like to talk about in supervision. which is saying something about the coach. So I think that is what, and I think the systemic thinking is what beyond that, which a coach needs to learn, because we are not taught systemic thinking in our coaching process. We aren't also taught about how to access your body, how to access and understand what's going on in your body. We are not taught that in coaching. So some of the additional stuff that gets added to supervision makes it very interesting. All right. Harshit is asking us, how can we substitute supervision with mentoring when you have teams working across the globe under you? So I think the question is, how do you do supervision with teams, especially when they are widespread?
Well, now everything is digital.
So basically, is it about supervising the teams or supervising the coaches who are managing the team? What is really the question, Harshit? Because supervision is right now meant for coaches, is what we are saying. Harshit, is it possible for you to speak?
You are on mute if you're speaking, by any chance.
Yes, of course. And thanks a lot, everyone. So it's about when you have teams, widely present across the globe, and you are hardly able to connect with them on and off, right? So they're working in such a fashion that it's difficult for you to reach to them every now and then. So when it comes to trust building activity, sometimes it becomes difficult to supervise them.
Okay. So you're talking as a leader or as a coach?
As a leader.
As a leader, yeah. So I think what we are talking right now in a conversation is supervision is meant for coaches who are coaching other people. So what could be more appropriate would be to say that how do you basically support coaches who are supporting team in different places? If I don't know if that question makes sense to you.
Jaya, if it's okay if I try to
please
answer this.
Yes, please. That'll
From
be
a
nice.
leader perspective itself, right?
Yes.
I think the whole concept of supervision came from the word supervisor itself, right? From a typical supervisor who's supervising somebody when they're working, right? That's the base definition, right? And as a leader, you are also supervising people when you're working with them, and sometimes you're mentoring them as well, right? So the difference lies in terms of not when. When you say how, it's I think more about when, according to me. So when should you supervise and when should you mentor? Right? Because both can be done across the globe at any time. And who do you need to be different as a leader when you're supervising them versus you're mentoring them, right? So the definitions that we have given in coaching supervision and coaching mentoring, the same applies to your leadership as a supervisor as well as a mentor. Can you be more supportive and understand what's happening to people when you're supervising them, right? And also talk about norms, also talk about resources that they have available to themselves, right? So that's you supervising them in that moment. And when you're mentoring them, you're listening to a situation, you're giving them answers back most of the time, right? You're exploring somewhat, but at the end of the day, you're providing the answer to them. So it's for me, it's about deciding when to do supervision and when to do mentoring versus how do we substitute. Both are required at different times. Both have important roles to play. So what also we are saying is coach supervision is not replacing coach mentoring. Both are important and both will never go away in their own space.
Harshit, does that answer your question?
No, it actually doesn't answer my question. So why would I say this? Because the word supervisor actually are also from the manufacturing industry, not the industries we are working as of now, right? Because we are working virtually, we are working with the teams who are globally widespread, right? So sometimes it becomes difficult to supervise people, especially when you don't know who they are, you have never met with them, right? And when you actually meet them, then you get to know, okay, so this was the person whom I was supposed to supervise, right? And I would not say there is a lots of difference in terms of culture, I would say, right? If you being in India, if you're working along with the teams and sitting across in Europe or in UK or maybe in US, so it becomes difficult to manage them, right?
Absolutely.
You can have one-time conversation with them over Skype or over Zoom, right? But But when it comes to talking to them over the phone or reaching out to them over email, it becomes difficult to supervise them. So this is practical I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
agree. I agree to your point when we are relating this to coaching and mentoring. So I also agree to that point.
Okay.
That's it.
I think
So if I could share a little on that, thank you for that, Harshit. Supervision as it comes from coaching actually comes more from psychology and counseling background. So that's a lot of its roots in supervision. But you're right, the word supervisor comes more from that factory floor. But I'm thinking in terms of a particular client that I work with that has manufacturing facilities in Vietnam. And how do we use supervision? And one of the things that I'm finding in terms of the coach supervision that we experience, there's a lot more of a somatic experience. And particularly as we're in digital environments or you said on the phone, I'm finding that coaches who work with managers who work global teams, that if we can get a somatic experience across the phone line, we can say, could everybody just stand up for a moment and shake out? Or if we could, notice a smile or something. Bringing a somatic experience is one way, a different field of knowing than we usually use on the phone or on screen, begins to help open up who we are a little bit more. And I found it very effective. It's not huge, but it's a tool that I found used. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, so essentially, from what I'm hearing from Rajat and Jim is going beyond the roles and understanding people as who they are in their whole system, rather than just looking at them as a role. Because the moment we start looking at people as this person is playing this role in this organization, we have a very less vision of that person. So whether it is a leader role or a HR role or a L&D, OD, whatever role we are in, when we start looking at people with extra lenses, a holistic picture about who they are and where they come from and what's going on in their system, the conversation changes, right? So that's why we say super plus vision. Just increase your vision about people and see them beyond what you see them. And that creates the magic, essentially. And then it doesn't matter whether it is skill or you're following a model or you're not following a model, you're just seeing beyond them. Awesome. In interest of time, I'm going to go fast and look at some of the questions which Nidhi's asking. Do you think suggest that supervisor should do any kind of psychometric kind of assessment of a coach at any time to assess them and their effectiveness? Interesting. What's your experience? Do you do any assessment for coaches when you take them for supervision? Jim, do you do that?
I don't. I'm not a huge assessments guy. I often say that they're kind of the lazy person's approach to everyone is different. That said, I do find them useful tools. They're shorthand for getting in, but I don't personally use them. I used to use them more and I find them effective, but I'll let other people answer that.
Okay. Yeah. Ida, do you use assessment?
No, I don't use, but if the coach wants to bring some results, something that they want to, that may be useful for the session to talk about, I'm open to do it.
Okay. Okay. Rajat, do you use assessments?
No, I don't. I haven't till now. So I'm being careful how I say this. So, I haven't till now, but it's an interesting thought. I actually haven't thought about it. I don't think I have had that conversation also, at all with any of the other supervisors in the market till now around assessments. It's an interesting point. And neither Peter Hawkins, I haven't even heard Peter Hawkins talk about it ever. So,
yeah, even this is new. In fact, this is actually making me curious to, think about this and say, hey, is it even a possibility, or is it recommended, not recommended? And maybe you would like to go back and check.
Sorry, I think that it would be more useful to use them if our clients want in the coaching process rather than in the supervision. It's more appropriate.
Yeah. And one of the thought that's coming to me right now is the idea of supervision is to break any kind of mental boundaries. And in my understanding, assessments create boundaries for us. They ask us to look at a limited place, while supervision is actually suggesting us to go beyond, see what's not visible, and try to look beyond in the system of everything. So Just a perspective. I'm also not a fan of assessment, so it could be coming from my own bias. All right. Another question is also, should organizations oblique supervisors take coachee feedback on coach's performance to justify ROI, and also provide developmental feedback to the coach? Not sure if coaches are matured for that. How would you?
So I can answer that. We do. Our coaches are assessed by our clients. We use NPS, Net Promoter Score, which is that basic, how likely are you to suggest your coach to somebody else or recommend your coach to somebody else. And it's a metric. I mean, we have to measure the effectiveness of our coaches. We find that it's measuring the quality of the partnership. We use that as the measure, which comes from the ICF definition. Coaching is partnering. So how effective a partner is this? And then we have something to talk about when we're looking at which coaches we use and which we don't. There's a glut of coaches out there right now, so clients get to choose. So this is one way that we measure it.
Net Promoter Score. Awesome. All right. How does coaching under a supervision limit and support topics of coaching addressed with clients and support? Okay, I'm not getting this question. Molly, can you ask your question?
Yes. So I was curious as to how the topics that are addressed during coaching with coachees is affected by the supervision. Like, is it going to potentially create an issue with topics that are less directly related to the workplace, even though the whole person is affected by their whole life and their ability to perform would be affected, therefore, by less direct topics?
Okay, we'll try to answer that. Rajat, would you like to answer that?
I'm still trying to figure it out. So,
okay.
Do you want me to say it again? Sorry.
Yeah, if you can ask us a short question, that'll help.
Yes, I can make it quicker. Sorry.
Thank you.
So when coaching, there's a variety of topics that we all know that we talk about, and some of them are more personal and some of them are more professional. So, but they all connect together in the bigger picture as to how well somebody can work and perform at the workplace. With the supervision involved, is this going to affect the topics that are addressed with coaching in the workplace?
Yeah, the simple answer is no, it doesn't affect the topics, because the topic itself is not the most important piece in supervision, right? So that doesn't make it's a lot to do with the relationships, it's the personality of the client and the coach themselves. So there's the dynamics that plays with that, but not the topic in itself. So that's not the focus in supervision. I'm being quick.
Does that answer, Molly?
Yeah, that answers. I just wasn't sure if there was going to be some observation potentially attempted by the employer of like the company or whatnot on where to address.
Okay. I think the whole idea of supervision is to see things in totality. So there is no filter whatsoever. So I don't know if that answers. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to take the last question as we are at the top of the hour, which is Ram is asking, coach, mentoring, and coach supervision, are these two different disciplines? In supporting a coach to be more effective, is it possible that one may move between mentoring and coaching in the same session? And it is a thin line of when you play what. And that's exactly the question that Kamaldeep is also asking as to when to mentor and when to supervise. How would you like to answer that? Anyone? Jim? Ida?
I guess I would say when to mentor, when to supervise. In a lot of ways, supervision is an art. And when you go through training, I mean, there's we take a lot of research and a lot of other stuff, but moving between these different things, I think is you define it as Rajat said, that it's not topic based. It's more about how we are showing up in the system. And so sometimes I find with coaches who are relatively new to coaching, there's tends to be a little more mentoring. Coaches that are more experienced, or a lot of the supervision that I do with ASUP is kind of ethical norms. You know, I'm not sure, you know, when I'm upselling or if I'm really in the service of the client, you know, these are ethical norms and questions. And then there's questions of resourcing. So Aida, Rajat, whatever you guys have.
Yes, actually, I agree with you. And I think that it's very important to differentiate mentor coaching that is working directly on the ICF competencies and all that, and the mentoring transferring experience. That, as Rajat was saying before, that is very important, the contracting piece, because sometimes the coach who comes to supervision may ask us to share our experience. So this is part of mentoring. So it could be some mentoring within the supervision. So that will depend also on what are we contracting with our client.
Interesting. Rajat, what would you like to say about that?
For me, both of them have their own space, right? In terms of, as I said, when do you require which one, right? And it's basically a simple scenario would be to say, when there is a competency level issue, then I would look at more mentoring and, mentoring, mentor coaching concepts.
Of course.
Right? But if it's more about work related things, I am seeing this happening with this client, but I'm okay with the other clients in the same piece, right? Then we are looking at a supervision experience for the coach in that moment, but not really a mentoring, because they're able to show that skill somewhere already, and they are being competent somewhere else. So looking at it from that perspective, saying, when they are working in this particular situation, what's going on? Is it different than their competent self, typically? Then you decide which one to offer.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Awesome. I think this conversation has become very interesting and created more curiosity in me about supervision and other things. So I want to just, I'm looking at the time and we all have to jump into something else, personal or professional. So I just want to take this moment to say thank you to all of you and helping us go through this exploration of these difficult animals that are existing in the market now. And we are all struggling to say, hey, should I go for a certification? Should I learn this? Is it really important? Okay, you're going to coach the coach, right? That's what you're calling supervision. But really, there are different spaces for different things and different functions, and hence the name is different. So nobody's trying to brand coaching for coaches as supervisor, but it's actually a different and a very different skill set which is required. Great. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your experience, and thank you for taking out time for this webinar. I think this is extremely helpful. All the participants who have registered, do we have the permission to share your email IDs with them in case they want to reach out to you and have some more questions?
Sure.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much. So we are going to do that. And once again, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation, all of you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
To be with you, and I love to have these multicultural spaces.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for
Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye. Ciao.